3 bone-chilling teacher hauntings that haunted my school forever. The bell rang, but it wasn't the sound that sent chills down our spines. No, it was the shadow. The shadow that flickered along the wall. There wasn't supposed to be anyone there. Everyone felt it, that icy breath creeping in. It hung over us like a dark cloud. Whispers echoed, twisting our minds. Did you hear about Miss Aldrich? They say, eyes wide in fright. Rumor has it she never really left. They say her classroom doors slam shut by themselves when the sun sets, sealing secrets trapped between the formulae and forgotten grades. Those who dared to stick around, the brave, or foolish, souls claimed they felt a sudden drop in the temperature. A cold hand brushing against their neck, making their hearts race. And one kid. He swore she even whispered his name, as if urging him to return something he had accidentally taken. The unsettling truth was, each of us had something to return, each of us held our own secret. Then came the other stories, the ones you didn't want to tell in the light of day. Ms. Campbell, the history teacher, was known for her sharp tongue, but after her passing, the school's halls became a silent testament to her fury. Students saw notes being written in an old, cracked notebook that hadn't been opened in years. "Get out," it said, as if she were warning us from beyond. The whispers of her deadly failing grade could be felt through every desk. People left the detention room trembling, knowing that Ms. Campbell's voice still haunted the walls. An eerie fog would roll in some nights. It swirled thick, whispering secrets beneath the pale glow of street lamps. It felt like there were eyes watching from all corners of the schoolyard. The chill in the air made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and crowds gathered, backs pressed together for warmth, sharing stories of things that went bump in the night. Fake or real, the fear surged among us, a collective shudder coursing through the school. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. And then, of course, there was the chemistry lab. Some called it a witch's corner. Stories surfaced of bubbling concoctions and strange explosions. But it wasn't until a daring exploratory group entered late one Halloween that the real drama played out. Catherine swore she saw a figure in white, swirling softly amid the caustic fumes. The moment they turned, the figure vanished, leaving only the pungent scent of sulfur and unease. What was she really seeing? Was it just a trick of the mind? As the sun dipped below the horizon, and darkness crept back to reclaim the halls, the walls began whispering again. What was really happening in those shadowy corners? Who were the teachers that never truly left us? What truths lay hidden beneath our very feet? The next day, the sun rose reluctantly, painting the halls in a weak yellow light that offered no comfort. It felt like a bad omen. Students shuffled into classrooms, whispering about last night, haunted and tired. Even the teachers wore worried looks, their eyes darting to corners, as if expecting to find long-dead colleagues standing there, waiting to unleash their wrath or longing for closure. In psychology class, Mr. Pine took a deep breath and announced, "I know many of you have heard the stories, but let us focus on reality today." Yet, even he couldn't shake the shadow that crept into his voice, the way his hands trembled over the desk. "We need to talk about Ms. Aldrich." The room fell unusually quiet. "What about her?" Sarah, usually bold, barely managed to whisper. "She's dead, right? Or is she?" Mr. Pine replied, a tightness in his jaw. "There are rumors, students feeling her presence, and some missing work that seems to have reappeared, mysteriously transformed." As soon as the bell rang, everyone piled out, the tension snapping like a frayed thread, hearts racing from the fear that hung in the air. Outside, a group of friends gathered by the swing set, nervous laughter barely masking their unease. Should we check out the chemistry lab? Jake suggested, his voice cracking. Oh come on. Emily shot back, last time we almost got caught. Plus, Catherine said she saw something in there. It's dumb to go back. But curiosity won. With shaky legs and an adrenaline rush, they made their way to the lab. The old wooden door creaked open as though it had been waiting for them. Dust motes danced in the slivers of light, and an unsettling quiet embraced them. It felt alive, breathing softly, wrapping them in its cold grasp. Do you feel that? Marcus murmured, his eyes wide as he scanned the surroundings. The air was thick, almost electric. Yeah. Let's get out of here. Emily whimpered, but there was no turning back now. They peered closer at the counters, relics of previous experiments. A notebook, the very one Catherine had mentioned, stood out amidst the grime. It lay open, pages ruffled as if gripped by invisible fingers. Jake picked it up, his palms sweating. The scribbles scrawled across the pages were frantic. You shouldn't be here, it read. Their hearts pounded in their chests as they read on. She wants to be free. Suddenly, a distant sound split the silence. A cacophony of shattering glass echoed down the hall. Instinctively, they spun around, eyes darting toward the exit. What was that? Marcus shouted, panic painted across his face. Maybe it's just a janitor, Emily suggested weakly, but even she didn't believe it, yet, something gnawed at them, something inexplicable that clawed at the edge of their minds. Hesitating, they edged toward the door, but the room seemed to grow darker, the air colder. A shadow danced just beyond their line of sight. Let us go. Now. Jake urged, his voice rising above the tension. They bolted for the exit, hearts racing, bursting through the door, but not without casting one last terrified glance back. The sight froze their blood. There, in the middle of the room, stood a figure cloaked in white, watching them with hollow, haunting eyes. As they stumbled back, gasping, a distant whisper curled through the air, echoing softly, "You have something that belongs to me." What did they take? What was the price for the secrets they harbored? The looming question hung in the air as they fled, not just from the lab, but from the shadows that pierced the night. Back in the safety of the open air, fear gripped them. Shadows flickered in the corners of their vision. They had barely escaped, but at what cost? And where was Ms. Aldridge now? The darkness still whispered, and they couldn't shake the feeling that whatever they had unleashed was just the beginning. What was waiting for them in the next chapter of their school's dread? The night was long and restless. Each of the friends lay awake, fear weaving into their thoughts like a dark thread. Jake stared at the ceiling, mind racing. The words in the notebook echoed relentlessly, "You have something that belongs to me." What did it mean? What did they take? The questions clawed at him like a persistent itch. Emily tossed in her bed, sheets twisted around her. Her heart raced every time she closed her eyes, seeing that ghostly figure cloaked in white. It felt wrong, like something slick and dangerous. She couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed a line they shouldn't have. Morning came, but the sun offered no comfort. The familiar sounds of the school filled her with dread. As they gathered outside the school gates, the air felt heavy, thick with an unspoken understanding. None of them spoke about the night before, but the silence was their confession. "Maybe we need to talk to someone," Marcus finally suggested, his voice barely above a whisper. "Like, an adult or a therapist." "Why?" "So they can lock us up." Emily shot back, a mix of anger and fear boiling inside her. "We can't talk about this. No one would believe us anyway." Just then, they spotted a group of older students huddled together, their hushed voices rising into agitated murmurs. Curiosity piqued, they approached, but were stopped short by Dean Thompson's commanding voice. "All right, everyone. Gather around." His expression was taut, eyes darting nervously. "We've received reports of unusual occurrences. Some students claim that they see things in the school. Ghosts, apparitions, and I need you to focus on your studies." A wave of unease washed over the crowd. It wasn't just them. Others were feeling it too. Someone whispered, "Is it about Miss Aldrich?" The murmurs escalated. The air crackled with fear and disbelief. What if Jake began, but the words caught in his throat. It was a shot in the dark, yet it carried a weight, a gravity. What if she is still here? What if she is trying to tell us something? What if? Emily echoed, but sarcasm barely masked her trembling hands. What if she wants revenge? The moment hung heavy as their eyes searched each other's faces for answers, or perhaps for reassurance. They stepped back, feeling the gravity of their actions settle over them like an anchor, dragging deep into the abyss. On their way to class, a strange urge pulled Jake towards the lab again. He couldn't ignore it, he had to go back. The notebook felt different now, almost alive in his thoughts, and maybe it held the key to understanding everything. "I have to check on something," Jake blurted out suddenly. "Meet me at the lab after school. We need to figure this out." They exchanged glances, hesitation clouding their expressions, but curiosity won over fear yet again. The plan was set, and despite the rainbow of emotions swirling uneasily in their chests, they nodded in agreement. Classes dragged on painfully slow. Every tick of the clock seemed like a countdown, each bell ringing out like a reminder of the darkness lurking just beyond the walls. When the final bell rang, dread coiled around them tighter than ever. As they made their way to the lab, shadows curled in the corners of the hallway, whispering secrets just out of reach. The old door creaked open again, the familiar chill rushing over them. "What do you think we'll find?" Emily asked, a hint of fear lacing her words. "Answer," Jake replied, a determined glint in his eyes. They stepped inside, shadows shifting around them like phantoms. The air grew colder, thick with anticipation. Jake approached the counter, heart drumming loud in his ears. Suddenly, a crash echoed from the back room. They froze, breath caught in their throats. The door swung open, a gust of frigid air sweeping through as the darkness loomed. "Who is there?" Marcus whispered, his voice trembling. And then they heard it, a voice, familiar and hollow, whispered their names, Jake, Emily, Marcus. The spectral chill wrapped around them, binding them in place. "Run!" Emily screamed. But before they could move, a figure emerged from the dark. Eyes gleaming with a haunting glow. "What have you come for?" It was Ms. Aldrich, but it wasn't her. They stood frozen, faces paling under her ghostly gaze. Were they too late to make things right? What had they awakened? And just like that, the terrifying reality returned to the forefront of their minds. Sometimes, the things you think you understand are just the beginning of something much, much worse. What other horrors lay waiting in the shadows? The room felt like a tomb, the air thick and choking. As Miss Aldrich loomed in the doorway, her figure shimmered with an otherworldly light, flickering like an old movie reel, casting unease over the friends. Jake's heart raced, the urgency pounding in his chest like a war drum, every instinct screaming to flee. Emily's mind raced, she subconsciously grasped Marcus's arm. "What do we do?" Her voice was barely a whisper, fear weaving through every word. "Stay calm," Jake replied, though his own voice trembled. "We need to figure out what she wants." But the words barely hung in the air before Miss Aldrich took a step forward, her form twisting slightly as her eyes locked onto them, piercing and cold. "You have disturbed my rest," she intoned, each word echoing like the clanging of a bell in an abandoned church. "Disturbed?" Marcus echoed, shocked. "We didn't mean you took from me." Her whisper turned to a scream, rising in intensity that sent shivers racing down the backs of all three. The shadows in the corners deepened, creeping closer, wrapping around them as if alive, feeding off their fears, panic ignited within them. "We have to leave, now!" Emily yelled, her voice cutting through the weight of dread. But the door slammed shut behind them, a solid wall that denied escape. "Jake!" Marcus shouted. "The notebook. Did we bring it?" Jake's mind scrambled for clarity. The notebook. They needed to know what it wanted. "We have to find it." It might be the key. Where is it? Emily cried, her eyes darting around the room. The darkness seemed to pulse and swirl, threatening to swallow them whole. Before Jake could respond, Miss Aldridge's face twisted into something akin to a smile, though it was devoid of warmth. You think you can run? The past does not forget nor forgive. A sudden gust of wind swept through the room, scattering papers and tools across the floor. The shelves rattled, vibrating with a low, dreadful hum. Among the chaos, a notebook fluttered from the corner, landing with a thud right in front of them. Grab it! Jake yelled, lunging forward. He could feel the breath of something cold on his neck, like icy fingers brushing against his skin, urging him to stop. Marcus dove for the notebook, snatching it up with a fierce grip. Got it! He shouted, holding it aloft. But the moment he did, more shadows poured from Miss Aldridge, flooding the space and swallowing up every corner of light. They swirled around them, whispering, taunting, their ghostly voices a cacophony of forgotten memories and unfulfilled sentiments. What does it say? Emily urged, her heart racing as the darkness threatened to engulf them. Read it. Marcus's hands shook as he flipped the pages, each leaf ghosting past like a memory lost in time. It's just notes. And drawings. His eyes widened as he skimmed through. Wait. Hear their essay symbol. Jake strained to see, feeling his stomach drop at the sight of a familiar emblem. That's what we saw in the lab. It's the same one from the test tubes. Miss Aldridge, now glowing with an ethereal light, teetered dangerously close. You must return what you have taken. Only then may you escape your fate. The room flooded with an inky darkness, the walls closing in on them as panic clawed at their throats. Their breaths quickened, and a dreadful weight pressed heavily against their chests. Jake locked eyes with Emily and Marcus, a fierce resolve igniting within him. We have to face what we did. Not just for us, but for her. She deserves to be at peace. But as the shadows thickened, pulling in closer, something snapped in the underbelly of reality. Their world twisted and turned, and before they could grasp hold of the gravity of their decisions, the lights flickered and went black. In that moment, a single thought paralyzed them. When the darkness fades, will they find a way out, or are they trapped forever? What had they awakened, and could they survive the storm of secrets buried deep within the walls of their haunted school? When the darkness finally receded, it didn't unveil the familiar confines of their school. Instead, they found themselves standing in a dimly lit hallway, walls lined with shattered lockers and grotesque remnants of long-forgotten posters that once promised bright futures. A faint flickering light overhead swayed, filling the space with an eerie hum, creating shadows that danced across the cracked linoleum floor. Where are we? Marcus blurted out, his voice quaking as they cautiously stepped forward. The air felt different here, thick, sweltering with dread. Each breath was a reminder of their predicament. Emily swung the notebook around, clutching it like a lifeline. We went somewhere tied to her, she suggested, fear lacing her voice. Jake's instincts kicked in. We need to find a way back. But as he spoke, an unshakable dread settled in his gut. It felt like they had crossed a line they could never return from. Guys! Marcus interrupted, his eyes wide with realization. If this is connected to Ms. Aldridge, we need to retrace our steps. We've got to find where it all began. He scanned the hallway, searching for signs of life, or what used to be life, but there was just an unsettling silence that enveloped them. Suddenly, a resonant echo shattered the stillness. Footsteps. They froze in place, hearts hammering like frantic drums. The sound grew louder, an ominous rhythm that set their nerves on edge. What is that? Emily whispered, backing against the wall, her face pale. I don't know, but we can't stay here, Jake said, his voice steady despite the knot in his stomach. Let us find a classroom or something. We need answers. They hurried down the hallway, the flickering lights above casting sporadic shadows that stalked them like malicious figures. Every corner they turned revealed new horrors, old desks overturned, forgotten books strewn about, and a pungent odor that hinted at decay. At the end of the hall, they spotted a door slightly ajar, a soft light spilling through the gap. "In there," Marcus urged, leading the way as he shoved the door open. Inside, the classroom was a chaos of broken furniture and scattered papers. At the front, an old chalkboard still showed faded equations, reminiscent of lessons that hadn't been heard in years. They stepped inside, the air electric with a tension that prickled their skin. And then they saw it. A vision against the back wall. Miss Aldrich, her form fluctuating like a mirage, her ghostly presence accentuated in the dim light. "You tread where you should not," she said, her voice echoing eerily through the room. "You're bound by the decisions you've made, the toll of what you took. What do you want from us?" Emily shouted, her voice cracking under the weight of fear. Her chilling grin widened, revealing teeth that looked more like fangs. "To understand. You awakened me, tangled in my story. It won't end until it's complete." Suddenly, the ground shook, rattling dust from the ceiling. Objects flew off the desks, crashing to the ground as if the very school was responding to her wrath. "You must face the truth," Miss Aldrich shrieked, the shadows swirling violently around her. "No. We didn't mean to," Jake yelled, feeling the pull of darkness enveloping them once more. As everything spun out of control, that same emblem from the notebook materialized before them, pulsing with energy that flickered like a heartbeat. It seemed to beckon, entwining them in its grasp. "Grab it. Now!" Marcus shouted, reaching for the symbol. Even as the walls of the classroom began to crack, with a single motion, they lunged forward, but just as their fingers brushed against the emblem, a blinding light erupted, consuming them. When their vision cleared, they found themselves in a different room, but the walls were undeniably familiar. The lab. The smell of antiseptic filled the air, a stark contrast to the chaos they had just experienced. "What just happened?" Jake gasped, gripping the edges of the table to steady himself. Emily's eyes darted around. "It's still here and so is she." Suddenly, a memory, a vision, flickered in her mind. Something they had missed. The notebooks. There has to be more. An unsettling realization washed over them as they pieced everything together. If Miss Aldrich wanted them to understand her story, they would have to confront it fully. What they had taken was more than an item. It was a connection to the heart of her tragedy, but as frustration built, they heard that chilling whisper again. Return what was lost, mend the fractures or face eternal reckoning. As the weight of her words settled in the air, they knew their next move could seal their fates forever. Would they have the courage to uncover the dark truths embedded in the fabric of their haunted school before it consumed them whole? Jake's heart raced. The lab was just as they had left it, or was it? The equipment glinted with an unnatural sheen, and a sense of time-warped disorientation churned in his stomach. What did they awaken? Emily's voice broke through his thoughts like a cry reverberating in a canyon. "Look! Over there!" She pointed to a desk piled high with notebooks, their spines cracked and yellowed with age. The fleeting memories of Miss Aldrich's voice echoed in his mind like a cruel chant. Return what was lost. Those could be the answers, Marcus breathed, eyeing the notebooks. Fresh tension knotted in his gut as he stepped closer. The moment they approached, a heavy thrum filled the room. Each notebook seemed to pulse with the same energy as the emblem they had nearly grasped. The chill creeping up Jake's spine intensified. It was as if the air itself held its breath, waiting with bated anticipation. As Jake reached out to the nearest notebook, he felt something cold wash over him, a spectral chill that whispered his name. Jake. The voice slinked like oil across the surface of his thoughts, and he recoiled, but not before catching a glimpse of a faded photo tucked between the pages. Miss Aldrich, younger and vibrant, arms entwined with students celebrating some triumph, her smile warm and inviting. The juxtaposition with her current form sent pangs of regret through him. What if she's not the only one tied to this place? Emily suggested, leaning closer and flipping open a notebook. There has to be a reason these are here. They gathered around, their curiosity mingling with dread as they skimmed the scrawled notes and sketches. Each page revealed a fragment of Miss Aldridge's life and, ominously, her deteriorating connection to the students she once cherished. The last entries sent ripples of horror through their minds, detailing strange occurrences, disjointed conversations with fleeting shadows, and a growing loneliness that seemed to creep into her soul. "Guys, it mentions a ritual," Marcus said, an edge of terror creeping into his tone. "She tried to bind herself to the school and to us." "What? No, no, she can't." Jake's frantic denial was cut off by a crash behind them. They whipped around to see shattered glass raining down from the broken window. The room was no longer still, it pulsed with life, shadows darting across the walls, whispering secrets in a language they couldn't comprehend. "Run!" Marcus shouted, pulling Emily with him as they dashed for the door, but as they reached it, the very air morphed into a solid block. An unseen force held them back, pushing against their skin like the weight of death itself. Jake struggled, feeling the essence of something dark wrapping around him. "Your fate is bound to the truth," a voice echoed, more commanding this time, belonging to Miss Aldridge but tinged with a sinister echo that rattled their bones. "You cannot escape what was meant to be. Let us go." Emily screamed, her voice cracking with desperation. Suddenly, the emblem they had seen earlier ignited in the air, glowing with furious light and casting off shadow after shadow. It hovered, drawing them in, whispering fragmented stories that mixed with the shrieks and moans of the trapped souls around them. "Trust in what you've learned or perish within this cycle." Miss Aldridge's voice now echoed like a dark promise, filling the room with the weight of inevitability. The brightness intensified around the emblem, and in a swell of desperation, they grasped one of the notebooks tighter. It held the key, or perhaps the trap. "Let us find the truth," Jake shouted, more determined than ever as they pressed closer to the shimmering light, but as they did, the shadows struck, clinging to them like cold mist, igniting a fear so profound that it threatened to freeze their hearts. Caught in this menacing grip, they knew they had run out of time. Would they uncover the secrets needed to break the curse, or would this phantom world consume them whole? Jake's heart thundered as the swirling shadows clawed at him, icy fingers wrapping around his arms, pulling him into their grasp. He could feel their breath, chilling his skin like frostbite. Panic surged within him. "Emily! Marcus! We can't let this." His shout was swallowed by the cacophony around them, a whirlwind of whispers that knifed through his thoughts. They were losing control. With a sudden, desperate jerk, Jake lunged toward the emblem, hoping its light could provide some kind of sanctuary. It shimmered wildly, pulsating as if it responded to his fear. "We need to hold on to this," he shouted, his voice barely rising above the chaos. The moment their fingers brushed against the emblem, a shockwave exploded through the room. It felt like electricity coursing through their veins, connecting them in an unbreakable bond. The shadows hissed, a collective disapproval vibrating through the air as they twisted and contorted, trying to break apart the connection. "Let go." Emily's voice was a mixture of terror and defiance. "We can't keep clinging to her ghost." The admonition stung. Jake knew they couldn't let go. Not now, not when they were this close. As if sensing their hesitation, the emblem glowed brighter. Memories flooded into Jake's mind, images of Ms. Aldrich smiling, laughing, thriving. But then the scenes darkened, a sickening transition into despair and loneliness that clawed at his heart. "She didn't just bind herself to us," Jake gasped as understanding settled like ice in his chest. "She trapped her pain here too." Marcus, gritting his teeth against the otherworldly pressure, yelled, "We have to confront it. There must be something in that notebook." His eyes darted around, searching for a clue, a lifeline, something to break the cycle that felt suffocating. As Emily flipped through pages frantically, she stumbled upon a sketch, a dark swirl resembling the shadows now haunting them. At the bottom, scrawled hastily, were words that made her breath hitch. "To free the soul, one must confront the shadow." Confront? Jake echoed, dread crashing over him like a tidal wave. What does that even mean? The shadows shifted violently, articulated by a raspy voice that called out over the tempest. "Free the soul or suffer eternal torment." The air thickened with an ominous weight. Jake exchanged panicked glances with Emily and Marcus. They were staring now, not just at the images destructing Ms. Aldridge, but the looming shadows that felt like dark teeth ready to snap. Do we fight them? Or do we risk being engulfed? Jake asked. Each word dripped with uncertainty but painted a chilling clarity. They had no choice. I can't let her pain keep us all prisoners, Emily resolved, shaking off the fear that gripped her throat. Let us do it. We confront the darkness together. With burgeoning resolve, they linked hands around the glowing emblem. Jake's heart raced as determination pumped through him, time to act against the looming threat. On 3, we unleash the light. 1, 2, 3. As Jake shouted that word, they focused their energy together, pouring their resolve into the emblem. The shadows screamed, a deafening wail that echoed off the walls. Darkness clashed against light in a tumultuous storm, blinding and disorienting. Just when Jake thought they had a chance, a piercing scream erupted, louder than any sound he had ever heard. It was neither human nor ghostly. It was an amalgamation of all pain that had ever existed in that space, a raw, agonizing cry for salvation. In that moment, amid the roiling chaos, the room cracked open like worn parchment. A blinding beam shot up through the ceiling, slashing through the shadows, illuminating the corners that had long been consumed by darkness, and yet, as the shadows began to dissipate, retreating like a tide, Jake noticed a figure emerging. Help me! The figure cried, an indistinct blend of familiar and foreign. You must free me or we are all lost. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Who was that? Did they truly think they could stand against the shadows? Could this figure be the key to their salvation or another trap? The light enveloped them, yet doubt crept into his mind as the shadows lunged for the vibrancy that was their only hope. Would they find the truth in time, or were they just prolonging their fate? Time was slipping away. The blinding light seemed almost alive, wrapping Jake in warmth while the shadows recoiled, as if shrinking from its embrace. But the figure that anguished plea rooted him in paranoia. Who was this lost soul demanding freedom? Each word echoed in his mind, reverberating amid the chaos. They needed answers and they needed them fast. Jake! Emily's voice broke through his thoughts. What do we do? We can't just leave them. Her eyes shifted, wide with fear, darting between the figure and the diminishing shadows. I don't know, he took a shaky breath. But whatever this is, it's connected to Ms. Aldridge. Marcus, squeezing Jake's hand, said, that means we have to be careful. If we lash out, we might just unleash more darkness. He stole a quick glance at the figure emerging from the whirl. The shadow drew closer, revealing features that danced between recognition and despair. Was that Ms. Aldridge's face, twisted in anguish, or was it something else? It felt hauntingly similar and yet entirely wrong. You shouldn't have come here, the spirit lamented, its voice thick with sorrow. You can't undo what has been done. But we can try. Emily exclaimed, emboldened by desperation. We can help you. Yet with every pleading word, darkness clawed closer. The shadows lurched forward, stretching like malice ready to strike. Jake could feel the pulse of panic quicken within him. What if we have to fight instead of save? He felt cold sweat trickle down his spine. What if confronting the shadow means facing something worse? Jake, listen. Emily insisted, her grip tightening around his wrist. We have that book. There must be something in there we haven't seen yet. Maybe something about how to confront the shadow without losing ourselves. The figure watched, a tragic mixture of hope and dread on its face. It felt so familiar, yet the shards of sorrow in its gaze caused ice to form in Jake's gut. The whispers grew louder, a maddening symphony of lament echoing from everywhere and nowhere at once. Driven by instinct, Jake ripped the notebook from Emily's grasp and flipped through its fragile pages. The air trembled as the shadows surged, invading his senses with rancid fear. Come on, his fingers searched in desperation for the notes from Ms. Aldridge, anything that could help them. Wait. Marcus exclaimed, a flicker of realization dancing across his features. What about that symbol? The one we touched. What if it represents our connection to her pain? Jake's heart raced. Yes. They were linked. That pulse had been steady, their bond forming through their memories. It's more than just light, it's also about understanding the darkness. Then we confront it together, Emily said firmly. The shadows seemed to hesitate as she spoke, as if considering their next move. Together. Marcus echoed. Jake closed his eyes for a moment to steady himself, summoning all his courage. The shadows writhed, an elaborate dance threatening to swallow them whole. All right, Jake said, resolute. On 3 again. But this time he paused, feeling the weight of their decision. We picture everything she went through. All the pain and sorrow. They readied themselves, sharing a deep breath, linking their energy once more around the emblem. 1, 2, 3. As they shouted and conjured a wave of inner light fueled by understanding and empathy, a collective sound erupted. It was the echoes of burden lifting, the release of suffering they couldn't see but could feel. But the shadows began to swirl aggressively. They shrieked with rage, the once still air turning into a torrent of despair. The figure's voice broke through, desperate, you have to let her go. You can't save her by just holding on to her pain. No. Jake cried out, fear choking him. Could this truly be the key? A death sentence for the connection they felt. The light shook, flickering on the edge of collapse. Faces morphed in the darkness, converging upon them with terrifying speed. What if this was the moment everything changed abruptly for the worse? Just as the storm of shadows lunged, the figure's face flickered back to Ms. Aldridge's, a plea painted across her visage. Could they truly unlock salvation? Or would they back away, only triggering their own doom? The ground shook beneath them, and the light began to dim. Time was running out. The figure whispered, you must choose now. Jake's heart raced wildly as he faced the shadows, faith battling despair. Could their understanding be enough to turn the tide? Or had they awoken a darkness far beyond their control? A decision loomed before him. Would he risk everything for freedom, or would he unravel them all in the attempt? Jake's heart hammered in his chest, pounding like a drum echoing through tortured hallways. He could feel the shadows closing in, wrapping around him like a suffocating fog. The ground trembled beneath them, and the warmth of the light seemed to flicker, fading like an extinguished flame. Emily's hand was a lifeline in his, but he could sense her fear, thick and palpable. Jake, we have to make a decision. She urged, her voice barely more than a whisper, barely breaking through the chaos surrounding them. What if Jake's mind raced? What if letting her go means we lose everything we've gained? His thoughts spiraled, wrapped in anxiety. Would they truly be casting Miss Aldridge into the depths of silence, never to be heard again? The shadows writhed with anticipation, hungry and malicious, waiting for the first sign of weakness in their resolve. Listen! Marcus shouted, his voice rising above the tumult. What if letting her go doesn't mean losing her? What if it means freeing her? For good. The figure, eyes sad yet pleading, nodded faintly. You misunderstand the connection. Pain isn't love, it's a chain. The shadows shifted, sharpening their edges with rage. Every dark tendril seemed to lunge forward, fueled by urgency. Jake felt the weight of Marcus' words, heavy yet liberating. Letting go. It pressed against every instinct he had, the instinct that clung to hope in the form of connection, no matter how painful. But what if the only way to truly help Miss Aldridge was to release her? Okay, he stammered, uncertainty mingling with a flicker of resolve. If letting her go means we might save her, the shadows recoiled at their wavering strength. The air thickened, suffocating him, but Jake clung fiercely to the radiant glow he felt building inside him. Emily and Marcus mirrored his determination, their eyes appearing resolute as they focused on the figure before them. On 3, Jake declared, voice steadying. But we have to mean it. If we're going to set her free, we need to channel everything she felt in life, the pain, the sorrow, and let it go. They gathered their breath, a collective heartbeat beneath rising panic. Ready? 1, 2, 3. The words cut through the chaos, and with a force born of desperation, they released their hold on their pain, picturing Miss Aldridge's face, the warmth of her smile, the sting of her sorrow, the lessons of hope and courage she imparted. Then, they focused on the light, filling their voices with every ounce of strength they could muster. The shadows shrieked, their anguished wails a stark contrast to the beauty of their light. In that moment of clarity, Jake felt a rush of energy surge through him. Warmth enveloped him, countering the frigid tendrils of darkness. His heart swelled with an unexpected surge of empathy, and as he poured every bit of strength into his conviction to let her go, a radiant beam blasted forward, slicing through the shadows. But with that luminous energy, the figure swirled and twisted into chaos. "You don't understand," it cried, the once familiar voice distorted, trembling with power and desperation. "You're not just saving me, you're unleashing something far worse." The air thickened, palpable with the weight of her truth. With each passing moment, the ground surged around them, quaking fiercely. "Jake, focus!" Emily shouted, her voice steady, yet fear dripped from her words like a poison. "We can't back down now. Remember Ms. Aldrich." But Jake's resolve wavered. He could sense the darkness clawing back, feeling it battening down against their light. Had they awakened something worse? Something waiting in the depths just beyond their sight? Thick tendrils of shadow broke free, writhing toward them like serpents. Jake's breath caught in his throat. Was letting go truly their path to salvation, or had they just opened Pandora's box? Each pulse of darkness twisted, reaching, hungry, ready to devour them whole. "Please!" the figure cried out. "Make your choice." What lay beyond that pleading gaze? Could they contain the chaos, or would they be consumed? As shadows surged like a tidal wave, the question hung in the air, electric and foreboding. Would freedom bring light, or plunge them into an abyss? The answer remained just out of reach. The shadows surged, roaring back with a force that sent crispy tendrils of darkness wrapping tightly around Jake and his friends, squeezing the breath from their lungs. The flickering light scattered like confetti, but instinct kicked in. They had come too far, they couldn't stop now. "Let her go!" Jake shouted, the words bursting from him like cannon fire despite the chilling winds of despair whipping against him. The figure before them twisted, agony evident on its face yet refusing to fade. "You think you can escape? That this will end well for you?" The shadows boiled with rage, tightening their grip further as if sensing their resolve to carry the weight of Ms. Aldridge's pain. But with each heartbeat, the inner glow from the emblem and their collective hearts surged stronger, igniting a fire that refused to dim. "Together!" Emily cried, her voice resonating with conviction. "We confront this. We confront her pain." With newfound determination, they tightened their grip around the emblem, their thoughts merging into a chorus of compassion, clarity, and urgency. Empathetically, Jake visualized every believed lesson learned with Ms. Aldrich, every moment they shared, and all the stories woven into their school's fabric. He projected that light outward, envisioning it cutting through dark memories, unharnessing tight chains that had long held the pain captive. "Now! Let it all go!" Marcus yelled, the weight of his words punctuating theirs like a drumbeat. Together, they poured their very souls into the emblem, feeling the power of their bonded hearts surge forward, washing away fear. There was an eerie moment of silence as the glowing burst erupted outward, a shockwave of brilliance that pushed against the darkness. The shadows screeched, twisting away, slamming against the walls like they were trying to flee. The screams echoed, a cacophony unchaining anguish that had ensnared so many souls. But out of that chaos, a thread of understanding emerged. "To free the soul means we must confront her truth," Emily whispered. "It's what binds us. It's the shadow that must be faced, not willfully ignored." Each word resonated, weaving a connection deeper than the fear that had once threatened to annihilate them. With an understanding eclipsing their fears, they focused. They envisioned Miss Aldrich not the spectre cloaked in sorrow but the teacher who had inspired them, who had once dreamed a bright dream for her students' futures. The more they thought about her, the more they felt the shadows evaporate, tendrils retreating under the brightness of their collective vision, and then, as if lighting the match against a burning wick, a fissure erupted in the darkness. A blinding light broke forth, sending an overwhelming wave sweeping through the spectral presence. Miss Aldrich flickered in all her former glory, her smile tugging at Jake's heart. With a gentle nod, she guided them, her now radiant essence dissipating in a colorful spectrum that spiraled upward toward the ceiling. "I am free," she whispered, and her voice echoed through the school, reverberating until every ounce of darkness escaped like vapor. Jake could hardly believe it. Relief washed over him, flooding in, filling what had once been a void with warmth, a weight lifted, a presence cherished. Behind him, Marcus and Emily breathed deeply, joyous tears glistening in their eyes, and he felt that same spark ignite among them. They had done it, they had confronted the shadow, bringing peace to a lost soul. As the last remnants of darkness ebbed, the classroom transformed. Walls mended, colors brightened. The musty air lifted, replaced by the scent of fresh beginnings and hope. In front of them, the spirit of Miss Aldrich shined pure and bright, lingering as a final blessing. "Remember this, a lesson of love, mercy, and the courage to face your own shadows," she said softly before dissolving into a cascade of brilliant light, leaving behind a sense of tranquility. The trio stood stunned, drenched in essence anew. Each breath felt lighter, the school, now a sanctuary rather than a place of fear. They exchanged glances, understanding cascading between them like sunbeams. "You think she is truly gone?" Emily wondered, voice soft. "Maybe," Jake replied, heart brimming with gratitude. "But she is also everywhere, in every lesson we learned, every moment we will carry forward." With a vow hanging sweetly in the air, they stepped out of the classroom, ready to reclaim their school, to face their own truths, knowing together they could confront any darkness, and as they walked out into the sunlight, a collective weight lost at their backs, they embraced this new chapter not as frightened students lost in haunted halls, but as warriors of light, ready for whatever lay ahead. This was the end of one chapter and the beginning of another, filled with promise, resolve, and the knowledge that together, they could conquer anything. Now, before you disappear into your own adventures, this is the moment to show your support. You need to subscribe immediately to catch every exclusive story coming your way. Don't wait even one more second to share this journey with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Hit that like button now to feed the algorithm, and flood the comments with your reactions and theories about how we faced the shadows. You are the heartbeat of the community, so don't hold back.